inspect the summary video. Summary of activity. Put in a couple of bolts on the top rail. We need some pressure treated sleepers or some other mode of attachment here. Make sure there's no rust in the connections, which there is. Clean it, then rebolt it, no welding. Got to make sure that there's no rust in any of the connections, not seeing any, and verification that all these spacers that hold the treads are in good order, which they seem to be. Coming down here, you got to make sure that things are properly attached and that we have clearance from the city that no catwalk is needed on this rubber roof. A lot of times this step is going to be exactly the size of the catwalk step that comes around here and wraps here. Any original hardware, square head bolts, need to verify that it's in good order so it can stay, so that we can proceed to the opinion certificate with a disclaimer, or change these bolts out and there's no need for that. So that catwalk is in question here. Going down, make sure that all the treads have no rust in any of the connections, and then none of these spacers are in problem. None of the spacers on the gratings are problem, which they don't seem to be. Make sure that underneath it's in good order. Coming down here, I have noticed that there's rust on that connection there. That needs to be done, and the other side needs to be verified, but it looks like there's rust inside that connection right down there. Now when that occurs, you got to change the bolt out anyway, so then it needs to be sealed and put back. These 4 5/8 bolts, I definitely have rust in the lower part and the upper part, so I recommend that those 3 bolts on this side and those 3 bolts on this side get redone. I have verified that this does come up. There's a hole here that needs to be pinned so that this ladder can stay closed and only released from here, and down at the bottom the foot does not touch the ground, so there's a little bit of a play. So we either need to stiffen that up with another bracket that receives it, or maybe the foot needs to be extended so that when the foot goes down, it hits the ground and creates some stability. The railings here, you need to verify all the railings. See, you got a hex head and a square head, so you got to make sure that a lot of times it's just faster to take out the 3/8 and put in another upsized one to a 1/2 inch. Silicone shut all these to make sure no water gets in there. Now at least 75% of this fire escape has been rebolted, but there is some evidence of some original hardware still left behind. So either verify it or silicone shut it and change these bolts out, and when you put new ones in, you avoid that. Any welded connection, you must put a bolt in it. So a lot of times this might involve a piece of angle on the back side, because we're trying to nullify the need to x-ray or load test this weld. By putting a bracket on the back side with a bolt here and a bolt here, we avoid the need to have to verify any welded connections anywhere on this fire escape. Any questions on this fire escape, which has been 75% refurbished, and it has been fully painted since the remodeling? The main concern is that catwalk, which might be a city issue, that to allow it to be a pre-existing non-conforming issue on this roof is all that needs to be done on this particular fire escape here on Garden Street. Any questions? 866-649-0333. 866-649-0333. Cisco Meneses. Fire escape engineers inspect the summary video. What we're going to do here is basically detail on the photographs just exactly what needs to be done. 1, to achieve certification that just includes an opinion letter and a disclaimer, or 2, by doing certain steps you basically achieve certification in lieu of a load test because you've changed out all the fasteners. So let's start very quickly. We're going to start on the ladder. The fire escape has been painted black, but I was able to capture some of these shots before and show some of the issues that need to be done. So as you can see, a new bolt here but an old bolt there. So basically you need to confirm that the old bolt is in good order. You give it a twist to make sure it's tight. You got a silicone shut all around the whole connection, and if you just verify that that bolt is tight, that's called an opinion that the bolt is good. You change that bolt to a new lag bolt and then you get a certification. Okay, so that's going to be some of the issues. Going with the ladder, the entire ladder needs to have its connection sprayed with a silicone grease so that she'll operate, and she needs to be in a closed position. So this ladder will swing up and close, but there's a hole that needs to be put here so that this locking pin right here will let it stay closed. It'll look like a drain pipe when it's in a closed position, and the ladder is in good order right now. One of the issues we have is right here on this foot. It needs to hit the ground, because right now it's about 6 to 8 inches off the ground, causing some instability. All these joints here need to be sealed so that water doesn't get behind and weep into the wood, causing this ladder to be weakened in the future. So the right side of the ladder is in good order, but the left side needs an extension of the foot all the way to grade over here. As you can see, new bolts here on this connection, so just silicone on top, make sure water doesn't get into this. As you can see here, if you twist that square head bolt, both of these, you twist them and they're in good order, that's an opinion. You change these out and you put in new lag screws, and you usually go up one. So if these are 3/8, you got to upsize the hole to 1/2 inch, and that creates a certification. In some cases, you can also take this lag square head, leave that one, and put right in between the two, put in a new 3/8 lag, and that's called reinforcement, and that achieves certification. As you can see, the rust build up inside the ladder, so you need to have this area cleaned. Even though they've painted it black already, you need to spray silicone in there, something that will last for the next 5 years. And every 5 years you're supposed to grease this. We like a spray silicone with the little nozzle on it. You'll be able to get in here and spray to stop. And if it's going to be in a closed position, it'll stop some of this rusting. You may need to in the future change these connectors out and put in what's called vinyl washers in here so that there's no rusting going on in the future. But if any of them look frozen or they don't look so good, you can swap it out and put in a vinyl washer. Again, evidence of new hardware, but evidence of original hardware still in here. So let's get these swapped out if you want to achieve certification, or if you want, put in a new lag screw right in the middle between the two, and then seal this up with silicone so that water doesn't get in there. Same thing here. So original hardware, you got a silicone shut at the top, and if you want to keep those, you can, and then just put a new lag screw between the two, 3/8 by 3 inches plus minus, and that will achieve certification. Otherwise, just tighten these up, and that'll be an opinion with a disclaimer. This ladder will go up here, and once it goes up, this pin right here, this pin that goes through, will have to have most likely a hole somewhere around here. There was not one. So this does close, and it's about 4 inches square when it's closed. It'll stop water from getting into the ladder, and you do need a cap on top of the ladder so the water doesn't come down the cap. See, as you can see, original hardware everywhere. Just make sure you silicone shut everything. Original hardware on all the railings. Just silicone shut everything so the water doesn't get in there, because water will work its way in all these cracks. So wherever there's any structural, try to silicone shut everything so that we can get longevity. So it's all about connection management. This is the pin. And this pin, when the other piece comes through, and it's going to be in here, that other left side of the ladder is going to need to have a hole screw so that this pin right there can go through the ladder. Again, all original hardware. Let's get some silicone in here and start siliconing shut everything, because this fire escape was repaired years ago, and so 75% of this fire escape has had its fasteners swapped out. So this is an example right here. I got a new bolt there, but I got some old bolts below. So silicone shut everything. Visually confirm that the original hardware is good, or if you swap it out, you achieve certification. So it's a call. I think this fire escape is very close to certification versus just an opinion. Here's some of the things that got painted over by this fire escape in black that nobody sees, but look at all the rust sitting in here in this platform area. So my main concern is that I will be showing evidence that all the supports, and there's only 2 major supports underneath, that the 3 bolts, which I believe are going to be 5/8 bolts here, they are showing evidence of rust in the connection. So it's just easier to switch all 3 out and avoid having to give an opinion on this. But definitely there's rust in here on the stringer connection going up to the roof line. So that's got to be opened up, cleaned. Then you got to spray some primer in there, and then you got to silicone shut this so that this doesn't accumulate anymore. This is underneath, so change that bolt out. Change this bolt out after you clean it, and you got to silicone shut all this. And if possible, create a barrier over here and infill this with silicone so that the water doesn't accumulate anymore back up against the building. And create a barrier over here of silicone so that when the rain comes this way, it'll drip 2 inches away from the building. Change these bolts, change this bolt, because you can definitely see rust inside the connections, but they painted over it, they didn't bother changing. Silicone shut the through bolt into the building. Any holes, any cracks, fill it with silicone. Clean. See, there's rust that accumulated in this, so change this bolt out also. Change that bolt out. See the rust right there? That's rust in there. Change that out. Clean it, change out the bolt. Be careful sometimes what you have to do when you're doing the cleanse. You might have to put in a backup bolt just close to, so that way as you break that bolt, there's no welding. Don't forget there's lead on this fire escape, so there's no welding on lead fire escapes. And even if there was no lead and you need to have a fire permit in order to deal with this. Change that bolt out. These are so all the underneath bolts of the supports. Just change them out. There's only 6 total. As you can see, all the work is done on the railing. It's got brand new bolts from 5 years ago. But as you can see, some water and some accumulation is getting in there again. This is more surface rust right now, but you need to clean these and silicone shut this fire escape so that the water doesn't get back in there anymore. As you can see, this is now looking at the grating. We're going to be talking about the grating, and these spacers that run the length of your grating, even though they're painted black now, what you're going to start seeing is that these spacers have some cracks in them that water's getting in, and every 5 years these keep rusting from the inside out. So what you need to do on these, you can either render an opinion, and as you can see, here's the rust that's growing in there. So these definitely have rust. But they're just in the beginning. So we recommend that we silicone shut all these cracks so that water doesn't get in there anymore, and you render an opinion. With that, then the next step is to close any space where water can get in. But if you want to certify it, you need to get a piece of flat underneath and off to the side of this, and then you put a clip on top to basically negate the need for this spacers. So there's the ability of putting a flat underneath with clips above that basically negate and reinforce these spacers. That will get you a certification. Otherwise, you can check every one of these and then paint them, silicone shut them, and just offer an opinion with a disclaimer on all components, which tend to be grating and treads. So as you can see here, same thing. So you got to close these up. You got to close this up with silicone. And then there's another problem on all your treads. Water's accumulating in these areas where the top bolts are coming down. So you have to clean that out, chip it out, and then you're going to have to silicone shut that so that water stops accumulating in there. And if there's any opportunity to drill a quick little weep hole in this area over here so water can get out of this. This is trapped in here. And you always got to silicone shut these rods from above. Okay? So all of this got painted over when somebody did it black. See, here's what one looks like clean, but here's what one looks like totally dirty. So you got to silicone shut this over here. You got to clean this out, fill it in with silicone. Okay? So that stops the rusting process. And if there's any place that you can pop a little weep hole anywhere so water can get out, that's what you want to do. So again, more treads. So these are all painted black. I don't know if anybody cleaned them or not, but that's normally what needs to be done. You can see the spacers facing up. They need to be sealed. So treads and grating are a component that is not guaranteed unless replaced, and you can reinforce them to get certification, or you can just render an opinion on them. But my main concern on all of these is the front tread here. If that front flat lets go, because the inside piece is rotted out, that's a trip and fall issue, that's a liability issue, but it's going to be disclaimed because you can't get in these treads or this grating and repair the rust on the inside. You can only reinforce it so that it doesn't fall in the future. So also on this welded connection here, we need to have on the inside a clip that basically does this on the inside or underneath, and you're going to have a bolt here and a bolt here. So welds are something that we can't render an opinion. There's too much liability. The only thing we can do to every weld that is major structural is you gotta you got to bolt it so that it negates the need for all welds. Any minor structural, such as these over here on the railings, these are called minor structures. You don't have to reinforce those. You have to reinforce major structurals only on a fire escape. And this is a major structural. Okay, this is the staircase going up now to the roof line, which is now finished. Again, change all the bolts. As you can see, some of the evidence of rust from the drips. And the staircase going up to the roof. Don't forget, all these welds here are minor welds. The major welds are the major posting where it ties in. All new hardware on the staircase. So we're not. But as you can see, look at all the rust that's built up in there. So it needs to, even though it has new hardware, we got to open this up, clean that, and then we got to silicone shut this whole connection. This is another shot of the same connection. Silicone shut the whole connection after it's been cleaned and rebolted. Look at all that rust in there, see? That's all needs to be cleaned and then re-siliconed and re-bolted. As you can see, 75% of this fire escape has been rebolted, but it needs to be sealed with silicone. So every connection, new and old, that has a new hardware needs to be cleaned. So this is one of those connections where there's an original square head bolt here, 50 to 75 years old. You can leave it there, you can clean it, and you can silicone, but now I can only render an opinion on this if you leave that bolt behind. You change that bolt, now you're going to get a certification and everything's going to get sealed. So here's a new bolt, here's an old bolt, and my recommendation is that 75% of this fire escape is close to certification. Just finish it up. 100% new bolts, no square head bolts anywhere. Silicone shut every connection after you've cleansed it, which is not many, it's only a few that for some reason didn't get touched. And every time you have an original new bolt on this bolt is probably 5 years old plus minus, but look, the rust is starting to get in there. You need the silicone shut here, silicone shut all major connections. As you can see, 2 original square head bolts still attaching to the building. Swap this out, you reach certification, leave them in, I can render an opinion with a disclaimer. But either way, you still need to silicone shut everything so water stops getting in there and weeping into the lag screw, softening up the wood. Our concern here on this is that they've removed, there is a catwalk system on this roof that has no raised catwalk system. So a new catwalk system on this rubber roof will be the same height as the platform here and the same height as the tread there. It currently doesn't have one. All it does is have a rail there that basically goes around. And I've noted that that is a pre-existing non-conforming issue. We're not supposed to step on rubber roofs. So you'll speak with one city official, he'll say change it out, put the catwalk back. You speak to another official in the same city, he'll say it's pre-existing non-conforming, leave it alone. So it's really up to the owner as to whether or not he wants to put the catwalk back on top of this roof. There is slip and fall issues here. When snow and ice accumulate on a rubber roof, it's slip and fall, and people can fall down on this slippery surface. So we recommend that the grading be 8 inches off grade. The snow will fall through. You don't have to go up there and shovel because it's the requirement of the owner to basically remove any snow. There is no snow on grading because it falls through. There is snow on a rubber roof, and you need to clean that with a shovel. So I think the shovel is going to pierce the new rubber roof. So my recommendation is that a catwalk system be reinstalled so that it's self-maintaining, self-sufficient. Again, another welded connection here. Just got to put an angle clip on the neat side so you can put a bolt and a bolt. Try to use carriage bolts here so that there's no obstruction to the hands or to the fingers. This is underneath. You got a silicone shut on this one and this one up above here. You definitely got evidence that there was rust growing. So you just can't put a bolt in there. You have to clean out the rust and then silicone shut it and then put the bolts back in. So you can see the evidence of rust there, the evidence of rust there. But once they painted it black, I couldn't see anything. But I'm glad I got these shots. See the evidence of rust there in that connection? That they rubberized that new pressure treated. So even though the bolt is there, there's rust in there. You got to clean out that rust, and then you got to silicone shut it, put a new bolt back in. This is up on the roof now, starting to be on the roof area. This is that little stair that goes to that window, and so you've got some issues that it's got to be sitting on pressure treated sleepers, and they've rubberized that, but you got to make sure that it's properly attached. And as you can see, there was some metal here that touched the rubber roof. And again, usually between metal and rubber roof, there's PT. So you got to confirm that there's at least a 3/4 PT where that is, and that the connection sitting on there is properly sealed in silicone. And we like to tar the entire foot. Whenever we get it finalized, we like to use tar to basically tar up 4 to 6 inches of the bottom foot where it doesn't affect the shoes of anybody, so that we get the maximum protection during the winter. So anything that's near the roof line, if you can tar by hand 4 to 6 inches of it, it helps stop the rusting of these pieces that sometimes sit under snow for quite a while. As you can see here, there's evidence of rust inside some of these clips. Whenever you have rust accumulating in a pocket like this, clean it out and then infill it with silicone, so that whatever tries to get in there now just falls out through natural rain. See, evidence of rust in that connection there, so we got to clean that out. You got to tar the feet. As you can see, all brand new bolting. This fire escape, at least 75% of this fire escape has seen new bolting. But the treads still have the original hardware, as you can see, original square head bolts on the feet. They've got a piece of copper here. It used to rest where that copper rests. And it does tie into the building up here and to the ledge of the sill of the piece there. And I don't know if they want to allow, but it looks like there's room there for a 3/4 piece of PT to rest on top of that copper. So that needs to be discussed as what's going to be the final. But we need to get the screws back into this thing to secure it. So I recommend a 3/4 PT there, getting the bolts back in here. There is rust in this connection, so they didn't clean out the connection, they just put the grating back. Okay. So again, this angle clip needs to be cleaned. Possible PT in the area there. Put a bolt there. And as you can see what happens, a lot of these pieces, the rust is in between two connections, but it's minor surface rust. And as long as you keep the thing painted, this will be in check and under control. But when it starts growing out of control, then there's nothing much you can do. So with these connections, if we're not going to rest on top of this copper, and we're going to solely rely on lag screws back into a sill, and this thing is properly supported, then what we need to do is, again, secure it and then remove this piece that's over the copper, because it's just going to start staining the copper. Lag screws, this should be 3/8 by 3 inch on both sides at the very top. And again, now you have the accumulation going on and you see what happens. So whenever you can, silicone shut the tops of these, clean and blow out any debris that's inside inside this, and then if you can, silicone shut it, bury them, and then put in a weep hole so that if there's any water, there's at least an 1/8 inch weep hole on some of these, so that any water that accumulates there, any snow, has a place to go. Otherwise, if it traps in here, it's only a matter of time before it rots the top bolt on this component, which is called a tread. So silicone shut there, silicone shut there. So in conclusion, all your tread components, they need to, if for example, if you want to just an opinion, then you just basically make sure that all the treads get the crack sealed. But if you want a certification, then you use a clip with a piece of flat underneath, 1 inch by 1/8, and you use a McNichols clip on the front nose that grabs these two, and you use a McNichols clip on the back that grabs these two, and basically you get a certified tread, as opposed to, because it's been reinforced, as opposed to an opinion on a tread or a piece of grating. So the McNichols clip is going to be the final piece on this fire escape. So very quickly, in conclusion, we got tread issues, bolting issues. We got to talk about whether the copper needs a piece of pressure treated. We got some angles that still have a little bit of rust in them. We got to make sure that the top platform is secure. We have a catwalk issue that needs to be discussed from the roof coming down, because there's going to be a slip and fall issue for general maintenance, and the possibility of puncturing a hole on the roof when the maintenance guy is shoveling the snow or the ice off the roof. So that's why we recommend the grading going back. Some rust still in certain connections. Some all welded connections must be rebolted. There's no welded connections that will stay behind that we will even give an opinion on. All original hardware that stays, we'll give an opinion. You change it out, we give it a certification. There's rust down below by the treads. All the supports down below on the fire escape will be rebolted. This is a total of 6 on the major ones, so all these major supports get redone. Again, all the staircases can have an opinion, all the grading can have an opinion because they're not too bad, or we can reinforce them and achieve certification. There's only 75% of this fire escape does have new bolts. So I recommend just completing the full certification process. Otherwise, the treads and the gratings are not that bad, but as you can see in this photograph, there is evidence that they're starting to give way. The fire escape is now black already, so it's fully painted. No paint job needed on this project. Silicone shut everything against the building with a proper caulking, proper color. Change 100% of all the bolts. Make sure you remove any rust that's in it before you rebolt it. Infill the bottoms of all these so that the rust doesn't accumulate at the bottom. There is some rust on some of the connections between the second floor platform and above. Your ladder has a mix of some original hardware and new hardware, so I recommend just getting it all out of there and putting a new bolting that gets the certification. Your pin does have to be redone on the ladder because when you close the ladder, there's no hole for the pin. So that's an easy fix. Silicone shut every connection. Every connection that water can get in there, silicone shut it. This is where I estimate the new hole going to be, and that way when this thing goes up, this pin is going to go into this new hole, and you'll have security so nobody can break into the building through that ladder. Silicone shut. Don't forget the ladder itself. These components need to be greased, and then we recommend using silicone grease because it will last for many, many years once it's closed. Don't leave any original hardware behind because then you'll get an opinion. Don't forget the foot to the base needs to extend the foot so that we get some stability on the left side of the ladder. And that is the conclusion of the review of 3 Garden Street and what needs to be done on it. So we need a price for reaching certification with a disclaimer letter for just an opinion, and reaching full certification in lieu of a load test, no disclaimer letter. We need pricing for both. Any questions? This is Farscape Engineers. This is Cisco Meneses performing the review. Any questions? Give us a call, 866-649-0333, 866-649-0333.